Welcome back to another quiet night with us. Tonight, we drift far away from soft beds and city lights, out into a place where the sand stretches endlessly under a sky full of stars, a place where one animal has learned to survive without water for weeks at a time. Tonight's journey is all about the camel, the gentle giant of the desert, a creature that has quietly outlasted empires, outwalked storms, and carried entire families across land that seems to offer nothing at all. Over the next little while, we'll wander slowly through how its body is built for survival, how it moves across the dunes without sinking, how it keeps cool under a burning sun, and how humans and camels have walked side by side for thousands of years, sharing the same long roads and the same quiet silence, the same wide, star-filled skies stretching endlessly overhead night after night. There's no rush here. No urgency. Just a slow unfolding story, the kind you can let wash over you as your eyes grow heavy and your thoughts begin to soften at the edges, drifting further and further from the busy noise of the day. So settle in, get comfortable, pull the blanket a little closer, and let the desert wind carry you gently toward sleep tonight, the way it has carried travelers for centuries before us. Picture it now, a wide golden horizon, ripples of sand shaped by a wind that never seems to stop, and somewhere in the distance, a quiet line of camels walking without a sound, footsteps softened by the sand beneath them, their long shadows stretching out as the sun begins to lower behind the dunes. This is where our story begins tonight, and we'll take it slow, one gentle thought at a time, drifting further into the calm as we go, further into rest, further into sleep, letting each idea arrive quietly, without any need to hold on to it. Before we go further, let's take a moment to picture just how strange and beautiful this creature really is. The camel is often called the ship of the desert, and once you see how smoothly it moves across the dunes, swaying gently side to side, you start to understand exactly why that name has lasted for so long, passed down through generation after generation of travelers who watched it cross the same golden horizon. Its long legs and wide, padded feet let it glide over loose sand instead of sinking into it, almost like walking softly across snow in a pair of wide, gentle snowshoes made just for this kind of ground. Tonight we'll explore its hump, which isn't actually a water tank like many people assume, but something a little different, something almost like a traveler's packed lunch carried quietly on its back for the long road ahead, refilled slowly whenever food becomes available again. We'll wander through its eyes too, built with extra lashes and a hidden inner eyelid to block out blowing sand during a storm that might otherwise blind a smaller, less prepared creature. We'll talk gently about how it can drink an enormous amount of water in one sitting after weeks without any at all, and how its body slowly uses that reserve, almost like a careful traveler rationing supplies across a very long trip. We'll also drift into the quiet history of camels and humans, of ancient trade routes winding through open desert, caravans moving beneath star-filled skies, and long nights spent resting under the same wide sky we still see today, unchanged after all these centuries. There is no need to remember any of it. Just let the words settle over you like warm sand slowly cooling in the evening air, soft and slow, as we begin to explore this remarkable animal one gentle section at a time tonight, drifting further with each passing minute. So let's begin, softly, the way the desert itself begins each evening, with the sun sinking low and the heat of the day finally letting go into a cool, still quiet that settles over everything. Tonight we'll cover the camel's body, built almost perfectly for a world of extreme heat and very little water, shaped slowly over countless generations to handle a landscape that would exhaust almost anything else that tried to cross it. We'll look at how it manages to walk for so long without tiring, how it seems to carry an endless, patient energy across mile after mile of empty land under a wide open sky. We'll gently move into how camels give birth, how a baby camel learns to stand and walk within just hours of being born, wobbling gently before finding its balance, staying close to its mother's side for warmth and safety, and how herds move together across huge, open stretches of land, staying close, watching over one another quietly through the long days and longer nights. A newborn camel, still unsteady on its legs, often stays hidden beneath its mother's shadow for the first few days, learning the rhythm of the herd before venturing out on its own. Later we'll drift into the history of camel caravans, the old trade paths through deserts that connected entire civilizations across continents, and the special bond between camels and the people who have depended on them for centuries, treating them not just as animals but as trusted companions on long and difficult journeys through unforgiving land. All of this, told slowly, without pressure, just an easy unfolding of one calm idea after another, the way a documentary might quietly guide you through a place you've never been, until your mind grows still, your breathing slows, and your eyes finally close for the night, carried gently toward rest by nothing more than a soft, steady voice guiding you slowly through the sand. Let's start with the hump, since it's the first thing most people picture when they think of a camel. Many assume it's filled with water, but that's not quite right. Instead, the hump stores fat, a kind of built-in reserve for long journeys across places where there's nothing to eat for miles and miles in any direction. When food is scarce, the camel's body slowly draws from that reserve for energy, and the hump can shrink and even lean gently to one side until the camel eats well again and it slowly firms back up over time, returning to its familiar shape. It's less like a water bottle and more like a slow-burning lantern, quietly providing warmth and energy for however long the journey takes, however far the distance stretches ahead, however many empty days lie between one patch of green and the next. Picture a camel setting out across the open desert at dusk, its hump full and steady, ready for days of walking with barely a stop along the way, moving forward with a calm, unhurried patience that never seems to waver, mile after mile beneath a sky turning slowly from gold to violet. Some camels have one hump, known as dromedaries, while others, called Bactrian camels, carry two, each suited to slightly different stretches of desert and climate across the world, from the hot sands of Arabia to the colder plateaus of Central Asia. Both versions serve the same quiet purpose, though, a slow, steady source of energy for a long and difficult journey across land where almost nothing else grows, land that would seem empty and unforgiving to almost any other traveler passing through it, mile after quiet mile. Even the shape of the hump itself, upright and proud in a well-fed camel, tells a quiet story about the journey behind it, a living record of feast and famine written softly into its own body over time. Now let's talk gently about water, since that's really where the camel's story becomes remarkable, perhaps the most remarkable part of all. A camel can go for many days, sometimes even weeks, without drinking anything at all, relying instead on a body that has slowly adapted, over countless generations, to hold on to every bit of moisture it can find, storing it carefully rather than losing it easily the way most other animals do. When it finally does find water, it can drink an astonishing amount in one sitting, sometimes over 20 gallons in just a few minutes, refilling itself the way a traveler might finally rest after a long, dry road that seemed to stretch on forever, longer than the eye could measure. Its blood cells are shaped a little differently too, more oval than round, which helps blood keep flowing smoothly even when the camel is quite dehydrated, and most other animals would begin to struggle badly with the same lack of water. This unusual shape also lets the blood cells gently swell as they take in water quickly, without any strain or damage, almost as though the body itself was designed with patience in mind, built slowly across countless generations for exactly this kind of moment, a moment that might come only once every few weeks. Imagine a lone camel finally reaching a small desert well after days of walking, drinking slowly and steadily as the sun begins to set behind it, painting the whole desert in a soft shade of orange and gold, the light stretching long shadows across the rippled sand, quiet and warm before the cold of the night arrives, quiet, still, and calm, the kind of scene that feels almost timeless, as though it could belong to any century, any year, any quiet traveler passing through on their own long journey home, grateful simply to have found water at last, grateful for the stillness that follows. Let's rest for a moment on that image, a still desert evening, the sand cooling slowly as the light fades into soft shades of blue and gray, and somewhere far off, the quiet outline of a camel settling down to rest for the night, folding its legs beneath it in one slow, familiar motion, its breathing slow and even, matching the calm of the world around it, a small, steady rhythm against the vast, silent land stretching endlessly in every direction. Nothing moves quickly here. The wind settles into a gentle hush, barely stirring the fine grains of sand that cover the ground for miles in every direction, undisturbed and calm, as though the whole world had paused to rest alongside it, content simply to wait for morning. The dust drifts down slowly after the day's heat has finally passed, settling like a soft blanket over everything it touches, over rock and root and resting animal alike, quiet and unbothered by the hours slipping by, one after another, into evening, into night, into whatever comes next. A distant call of a bird, faint and far away, fades into silence, swallowed by the vastness of the open land stretching out on every side, until only the hush of the evening remains, soft and complete, wrapping around everything like a quiet blanket, warm at the edges, cool at the center. It's a peaceful pause before we continue our story, a moment to simply breathe slowly, to feel your shoulders relax, your hands soften, your jaw unclench, and let your whole body settle completely into the stillness of the night, just as the desert itself seems to settle quietly around us, unhurried, patient, and calm, waiting for morning without a single worry crossing its wide, quiet face, content to simply exist in this moment. Now let's move to the eyes, because a camel's eyes are wonderfully designed for a world made of blowing sand and shifting light, built slowly over time to handle conditions few other creatures could face without harm, refined patiently across generation after generation. Each eye has 2 rows of long, thick eyelashes that work almost like a natural fence, gently keeping grains of sand from getting in during a windstorm that might last for hours, protecting the delicate surface underneath from constant, gritty abrasion. On top of that, camels have a thin, clear inner eyelid that can sweep across the eye like a soft, built-in shield, letting them keep walking calmly even when the air is thick with dust and the wind is picking up around them from every side, turning the horizon into a blur of gold and haze. Their nostrils are just as clever in their own quiet way. A camel can close them almost completely during a sandstorm, only opening them slightly to breathe, which keeps sand from filling its lungs during the very worst of the weather outside, when a storm might rage for what feels like hours without end, blotting out the sun completely. Even its wide, padded feet play a part in this design, spreading out gently to stop it from sinking into loose sand the way a person or a smaller animal might struggle to do with every step, each footprint left soft and shallow rather than deep and heavy, barely disturbing the surface at all. Every part of its body seems to answer the same quiet question: how do you move calmly and steadily through a place that seems built to stop you at every turn? And somehow, patiently, the camel always finds its way through, carrying its calm forward across every ridge and hollow of sand it meets, never rushing, never faltering. Let's drift now into how camels move, since their walk is different from almost any other large animal you might picture in your mind, a rhythm all its own, shaped by centuries of crossing exactly this kind of ground, mile after patient mile. Instead of moving one leg at a time in a typical pattern, camels move both legs on the same side together, a gait sometimes called pacing, which gives them a smooth, swaying motion, almost like a slow rocking boat drifting gently across calm, still water. This is part of why camels earned the nickname Ship of the Desert so long ago, a name that has stuck for generations and traveled across many languages and cultures, carried along the same routes the camels themselves once walked, from one bustling market town to the next. This walk isn't just for show, either. It helps them cover long distances steadily without wasting precious energy, an important trait when the nearest water source might be days and days away across open, empty land, with nothing but sand and sky in every direction, and no shade to rest beneath. Herders who have traveled alongside camels for generations often describe the rhythm of this walk as almost hypnotic after enough hours on the road, a slow, steady sway that matches the quiet emptiness of the desert around them, mile after mile, without hurry, without complaint, simply moving forward, calm and unshaken, the way it always has, and the way it always will, for as long as the desert remains, patient and endless beneath an open sky stretching from one horizon to the other. Even riders new to this motion often say it takes only a short while before the swaying begins to feel almost soothing, like a cradle rocking gently through the night, carrying them slowly toward wherever they are headed. Let's slow down again for a moment. Picture a caravan of camels moving quietly along a ridge of sand as the sky turns a deep, soft blue before nightfall settles in completely over the whole horizon, dimming the last traces of daylight behind the distant dunes, one shade at a time, until only darkness remains above, calm and complete. Their footsteps make almost no sound at all, muffled softly by the loose sand beneath their wide, padded feet, each step gentle and unhurried, as though the desert itself were holding its breath, waiting quietly for the caravan to pass safely through. The only noise is the soft shifting of sand beneath their feet and perhaps a distant, gentle breeze drifting past, carrying with it the faint, dry scent of the open desert and the last warmth of the day, fading now into the cool of the evening as the light continues to dim across the far horizon. Somewhere overhead, the first faint stars begin to appear, scattered quietly across the darkening sky, one by one, like small lanterns being lit far above, watching over the slow procession below with a quiet, steady patience of their own, as old as the desert itself. There is nothing urgent about this scene, only the slow, patient movement of animals built for endurance, carrying on exactly as they have for thousands of years, calm and steady, unhurried by anything at all, simply continuing on toward wherever the journey leads them next, one soft, quiet step after another, into the deepening night and the waiting stillness beyond, where even time itself seems to slow down and settle into rest. Now let's turn gently toward history, because camels haven't just survived the desert, they've quietly shaped entire cultures around it for thousands of years, in ways that still echo today, in the names of places, the routes of old roads, the memory of caravans long since passed. For centuries, camels carried goods, people, and stories across vast trade routes, including parts of the historic Silk Road, connecting distant regions long before modern transportation ever existed to shorten the distance between them, back when a single journey might take many months to complete. Entire communities built their lives around these animals, depending on them not just for travel but for milk, wool, and even quiet companionship on long, isolating journeys through empty land where few other creatures could survive for long. In many desert cultures, camels became gentle symbols of patience, resilience, and steady strength, appearing in old stories and poems as loyal companions through hardship and long distance alike, remembered fondly across generations of travelers who owed them their safe passage home. Even today, in certain regions, camel caravans still cross remote stretches of desert much as they did centuries ago, following paths worn soft by generations before them, one careful step at a time, guided by memory as much as by sight. We've covered quite a bit of ground so far tonight: the camel's body, its water habits, its eyes and movement, and a gentle look into its long history alongside humans, a history stretching back far longer than most of us ever pause to consider. If your eyes are growing heavy, that's perfectly alright. Rest here for now, and whenever you're ready, we can continue this slow, calm journey through the rest of the camel's story. Whenever you'd like to pick it back up again, no hurry at all. If you drifted off for a little while, that's perfectly alright. Let's pick things up gently, right where we left off, easing back into the slow, quiet world of the camel, letting the desert settle around us once again. Tonight we continue exploring this remarkable animal, moving now into a few new corners of its story that we haven't touched on yet, corners just as quiet and just as worth wandering through slowly. We'll look at its fur, thick and shaggy in places, and how it actually helps keep the camel cool rather than warm, which might surprise you at first, since most people assume the opposite is true. We'll wander through its mouth and teeth, built for chewing tough, thorny plants that most other animals would avoid entirely, turning what looks like an obstacle into a quiet meal without much effort at all. We'll drift into how its whole body handles temperature, not just through the hump but through small, clever tricks that let it survive scorching days and surprisingly cold desert nights without much strain at all, shifting gently to match whatever the hour demands. We'll also touch gently on camel milk, a quiet part of daily life for many desert communities for generations upon generations, passed down quietly from parents to children. And we'll spend a little time with the softer side of the camel, the way it rests, the way it bonds with its herd, and the way people across history have felt a real, lasting affection for this patient animal that asks for so little and gives so much in return. As always, there's nothing to hold on to here, nothing to remember, nothing you need to carry forward into tomorrow. Just let the words drift by slowly, like sand shifting gently in a warm evening breeze, carrying you further towards sleep with every soft sentence that follows, one after another, patient and unhurried. Let's begin with something people rarely think about: the camel's fur, a feature that looks simple at first glance but hides a quiet cleverness underneath, one that took countless generations to shape. At first it seems strange that a thick, shaggy coat would help an animal survive intense desert heat, but the camel's fur actually works like a gentle shield, keeping the sun's direct heat away from the skin underneath rather than trapping it close to the body. In many camels, the fur is thicker on top, along the back, where the sun beats down hardest through the long, bright hours of the day, while it stays thinner underneath, allowing some heat to escape from the body when needed most, a quiet and constant balancing act that continues all day long without any real effort from the animal itself, adjusting endlessly to the changing light. This clever arrangement means the camel doesn't need to sweat nearly as much as many other animals just to stay comfortable, which helps it hold on to even more of its precious water for the long journey ahead, water that might otherwise be lost with every passing hour beneath the sun, hour by patient hour, day by long, bright day. During colder desert nights, when temperatures can drop surprisingly low after the sun disappears behind the horizon, sometimes catching travelers off guard after such a hot day, that same fur becomes useful in an entirely different way, trapping a thin layer of warmth close to the body instead. It's a quiet kind of balance, one coat serving two very different purposes depending on the hour, the season, and the wide swing in temperature that desert life quietly demands from every creature that calls it home, day after day, year after year, without ever asking for anything in return. Now let's drift toward the camel's mouth, because it plays a much bigger role in survival than it might seem at first glance, quietly shaping what the animal can and cannot eat across a long, dry season that might stretch on for many months at a time, testing the patience of any creature less prepared. Camels have tough, leathery lips and a thick lining inside their mouths, which allows them to eat plants that would hurt or injure most other grazing animals, including thorny bushes and dry, brittle shrubs scattered across the open desert. Where other animals might turn away from a spiky branch, a camel can chew through it slowly and calmly, almost without hesitation, extracting whatever nutrition and moisture the plant holds inside its tough, dry stems, treating what looks like a difficult meal as nothing more than an ordinary afternoon snack, chewed patiently over many long minutes. This ability opens up entire landscapes of food that would otherwise go untouched, letting camels survive in places where good grazing is scarce, and every bite matters a great deal to an animal walking such long distances between meals, sometimes going days without finding much of anything green at all. Their chewing itself is slow and steady, much like everything else about this patient animal, working through tough plant material a little at a time rather than rushing through a meal the way a hungrier, more anxious animal might. Picture a camel standing quietly beside a thorny acacia tree at midday, unhurried, patiently working through its meal while the heat shimmers across the sand around it, in no rush at all to move on to wherever it's headed next, content simply to eat at its own steady pace, undisturbed by the passing hours. Let's pause here for a moment. Imagine a quiet watering hole at the edge of a wide, sunlit valley, its surface barely rippling in the still afternoon air, catching small flashes of light with every gentle ripple that passes slowly across it and fades again into stillness, over and over, unhurried and endless. A few birds rest along the water's edge, dipping their beaks slowly and unhurried, pausing often between each small sip as though there were nowhere else in the world they needed to be, content simply to sit in the warm quiet of the afternoon, unbothered by the passing minutes. Somewhere nearby, the soft shape of a resting camel dozes beneath a lone, twisted tree, entirely at peace with the stillness of the world around it, its breathing slow, its eyes half closed against the warm afternoon light, in no hurry to be anywhere else at all, content to simply exist in this one warm, quiet hour, letting the whole afternoon pass gently by unnoticed. The shade beneath the tree shifts only slightly as the sun continues its own slow, unhurried path across the sky, and everything, for this one quiet moment, simply rests, without effort, without worry, without anything at all needing to happen next, just the soft hum of a still afternoon. Even the air itself feels still, warm and heavy, holding the whole valley gently in place, as though the entire desert had agreed, just for now, to pause and breathe together in this one shared, unhurried moment before the evening slowly begins to arrive, softening the light one small degree at a time. Let's talk gently now about how a camel handles temperature, because its body does something rather clever that goes beyond simply sweating less, a quiet strategy built slowly across many generations of desert living in careful, patient adaptation. Many animals keep a fairly fixed body temperature no matter what the hour or the season, spending a great deal of energy and water to maintain that steady number throughout the day, regardless of how harsh the conditions might become. Camels, though, allow their body temperature to shift slightly throughout the day, rising a little during the hottest hours and dropping again once evening arrives and the desert begins to cool, following its own quiet, natural rhythm rather than fighting against it. This small flexibility means the camel doesn't need to sweat as heavily just to fight off every degree of heat, which quietly saves a surprising amount of water over the course of a long, dry day under a relentless sun that seems to press down without end. It's a subtle kind of patience built directly into its biology, a willingness to bend slightly rather than fight constantly against the desert's demands, hour after hour, day after long, sunlit day. When night finally falls and the air cools rapidly, as desert nights often do, sometimes dropping many degrees within just a short while, catching even seasoned travelers off guard, the camel's temperature drifts back down again, calm and steady, following the same slow, borrowed rhythm as the land around it, never rushing toward comfort but simply allowing it to arrive on its own, patient time. Now let's drift towards something softer, the quiet bond between a mother camel and her calf, a relationship built slowly across many months of closeness and care, one small quiet moment layered gently onto the next. When a baby camel is born, it usually arrives after a pregnancy lasting well over a year, one of the longer pregnancies among large land animals, a slow and patient wait that matches everything else about this creature and its unhurried way of moving through the world around it. The calf stays close to its mother for many months afterward, nursing gently and slowly learning the rhythms of the herd around it, watching carefully how the older camels move, rest, and respond to the land, absorbing quiet lessons that will guide it for the rest of its life, one small observation at a time. Camel milk itself has long been an important part of life for many desert communities, valued not only as food but as a dependable source of nourishment in places where little else grows easily throughout the year, especially during long stretches of drought. It's often richer in certain nutrients than the milk of many other animals, another quiet advantage shaped by generations of desert living and careful adaptation to hardship that few other creatures could match. Families in some regions have relied on this milk for generations, sometimes drinking it fresh, sometimes turning it into other simple foods, carrying forward a tradition as old as the relationship between camels and the people who have cared for them faithfully across so many long years. Let's wander gently into how camels behave within their herds, since there's a quiet social side to this animal that often goes unnoticed by those who only picture it walking alone across the sand under a hot, empty sky, far from any other living creature. Camels tend to form small, loosely connected groups, often led by an older, experienced female who seems to guide the others toward food, water, and safety across unfamiliar ground with a calm and steady confidence. Within the herd, camels often rest close together, and it's common to see them gently nuzzling or resting their heads near one another, small quiet gestures of comfort and closeness that pass between them without any real fuss or noise, simple and unremarkable to anyone watching from a distance, yet meaningful all the same. They also communicate through soft sounds, low grumbles, and occasional loud groans, especially when annoyed or when settling small disagreements over space or food among themselves, though these moments rarely last long before calm returns. Despite their sometimes stubborn reputation, camels form real, lasting bonds, both with each other and, over time, with the humans who care for them patiently across years of shared travel and quiet companionship built slowly across many long, dusty roads. A herder who has spent years with the same camels often describes a quiet kind of trust that builds slowly, step by step, much like the long, steady walk across the desert itself, mile after patient mile, season after season. Let's rest again for a moment. Picture a wide, open plain just after sunset, the sky fading slowly from soft orange into a deep, quiet blue, streaked here and there with the last thin traces of pink light clinging softly to the horizon before finally letting go entirely into the dark. A small herd of camels settles down together for the night, their shapes calm and still against the darkening landscape, entirely undisturbed by the growing dark around them, breathing slow and even beneath the first faint stars beginning to appear above them, one by one, quiet and unhurried, scattered gently across the deepening sky like tiny, distant lanterns lit softly by some unseen hand. The wind has gone almost completely still now, carrying only the faintest trace of the day's warmth as it slowly fades into the coolness of night, settling gently over the entire landscape, softening every edge of the horizon into shadow. Somewhere in the distance, the last outline of the horizon disappears entirely into darkness, leaving only the herd, the stars, and the wide, silent expanse of sand stretching endlessly in every direction, patient and unbothered, exactly as it has been for countless nights before this one, and countless more still to come, each one as calm and unhurried as the last, folding gently into the next. Now let's turn towards something a little different, the way camels have been woven into human culture far beyond simple transportation, becoming quiet symbols in stories, songs, and everyday life across many regions of the world, from old poems to modern celebrations. In many old stories and traditions, the camel appears as a symbol of patience, endurance, and quiet reliability, an animal trusted to carry people safely through some of the harshest conditions on earth without ever complaining about the distance or the heat. Camel racing remains a cherished tradition in certain regions today, drawing crowds who admire the animal's grace and surprising speed over short distances, a stark contrast to its usual slow, steady walking pace across open land that stretches for miles without a single landmark to guide the eye. Camels have also appeared in old artwork, carvings, and manuscripts, quiet reminders of just how deeply this animal became woven into daily life across many desert cultures over the centuries and generations that followed, one story built quietly upon another. Even now, in some countries, camels are kept not only for practical work but out of genuine affection, valued much like a loyal companion rather than simply a tool for travel through difficult terrain that few others would dare to cross. Their steady presence across so much human history speaks to something simple and enduring, a quiet partnership between two very different creatures learning, slowly, to survive the same difficult land together, side by side, through countless generations of hardship and quiet resilience. We've now spent quite a while together tonight, drifting gently through the world of the camel, from its shaggy coat and clever temperature shifts to its gentle bond with its calf, its quiet herd life, and its long, woven history alongside humans across so many centuries and generations that have come and gone, each one adding a little more to this quiet, patient story that continues even now. There's still more of this story left to explore, more quiet corners of the desert still waiting for us whenever we're ready to return to them together, whenever the time feels right for both of us, no sooner, no later, only when it feels natural to continue. For now, though, let your thoughts settle, let your breathing slow, and if your eyes are already closed, that's exactly where they should be, resting easy and unhurried, drifting quietly toward whatever rest you need tonight, no matter how the day before it went. Rest well tonight, and whenever you're ready, we can continue this slow journey a little further, wandering deeper into the calm, patient world of the camel, one gentle thought at a time, just as we have been all along, drifting softly toward a peaceful, restful sleep, carried gently by nothing more than a slow and steady voice moving quietly through the dark, asking nothing of you but rest. If you drifted off for a while, that's perfectly all right, that's exactly what these nights are for. Let's ease back into the story gently, picking up once more in the quiet company of the camel. Tonight we'll wander through a few final corners of this animal's world, the kind of details that round out a story rather than begin it. We'll talk about the people who have lived alongside camels for generations, the nomadic herders who built entire ways of life around this patient animal, moving with the seasons across vast, open land. We'll drift into how camels came to be used in different corners of the world, from working loads across mountain passes to carrying travelers along old desert roads that stretched for many days. We'll touch gently on the camel's surprising evolutionary history, tracing back further than most people realize, long before the deserts we picture today ever existed. And we'll spend our final stretch tonight simply resting in the calm, unhurried rhythm of this creature's world, before drifting, at last, toward a full and peaceful night's sleep. As always, there is nothing here to hold on to, nothing to remember, only soft words moving slowly through the dark, carrying you gently toward rest. We'll take our time with each of these, letting one quiet idea lead gently into the next, the way the desert itself unfolds slowly from one horizon to another. There's no need to hold on to any of it tightly tonight, only to let it drift past like warm evening air. Every part of tonight's closing chapter connects back to everything we've already wandered through together across these past few nights, tying the whole story into one long, unhurried thread. And as always, there's no pressure to remember a single word of it, only to let it settle over you slowly, the way dust settles gently over quiet, still sand. Let's begin tonight with the people who built their lives around the camel, herders and traders who understood this animal not as livestock alone but as a true partner in survival. Across many regions, camels have not just carried goods, they carried entire households, tents, water, and belongings from one grazing ground to the next as families followed the changing seasons. This nomadic way of life depended almost entirely on the camel's endurance, since no other animal could carry so much, so far, on so little water and food along the way. Herders learned to read their camels closely, noticing small signs of thirst, tiredness, or discomfort long before they became serious, a quiet skill passed down patiently from one generation to the next around evening fires. In many of these communities, A family's wealth was once measured not in coins but in camels, a living, breathing kind of currency that also happened to walk, graze, and rest beside its owners. Even today, in certain regions, this deep familiarity between herder and camel continues quietly, largely unchanged by the passing of time and the modern world around it. Even young children in these communities often grow up learning to walk beside camels long before they learn much else, absorbing a quiet, practical understanding that no book could ever fully teach. Trade itself moved at the pace of the camel, and entire economies once rose and fell along the routes these animals walked, season after season, generation after generation, patient and unbroken. Even simple daily rituals, tending to the animals at dawn and again at dusk, shaped the rhythm of entire households for generations, a quiet routine as steady and dependable as the animals themselves. It's a way of life that, in some places, still continues quietly today, largely unchanged beneath the surface of a much faster modern world. Now let's drift toward the many different jobs camels have taken on throughout history, since their usefulness reached far beyond simply carrying people from place to place. In some regions, camels hauled heavy loads across steep, rocky mountain passes where wheeled carts could never safely travel, their sure, steady footing making them far better suited to uneven ground. In others, they pulled carts, turned water wheels, or helped plow fields, offering a slow, dependable kind of strength wherever it was needed most. Military forces in several historical periods relied on camels too, forming entire units built around their endurance, moving supplies and soldiers across terrain that would exhaust horses within days. Even communication once depended on camels in certain remote regions, with riders carrying messages across distances that would otherwise have taken far longer to cross safely. Through all of this, the camel rarely changed its own steady pace, adapting instead to whatever task was placed before it, carrying the weight of entire economies without ever needing to rush. Even simple daily errands, fetching water, gathering firewood, moving goods between nearby villages, often depended on a camel's steady back rather than any other form of transport available at the time. In each of these roles, the animal's quiet reliability mattered more than speed, a trait valued again and again across so many different corners of the world where fast, fragile animals simply could not survive for long. Through all of this, the camel rarely seemed to mind, carrying whatever weight was placed upon it with the same calm, unhurried patience it carried everywhere else in its long, working life. It's a quiet kind of versatility, one animal filling so many different roles across so many different centuries and countries. Let's pause here again for a moment. Picture a narrow mountain trail at dusk, loose stones scattered across the path, and a line of heavily loaded camels moving slowly and carefully along the ridge, their steps sure and unhurried despite the steep drop just beside them, calm even where the ground itself seems uncertain. The moonlight catches faintly on the loose stones scattered across the trail, and somewhere below, a thin river winds quietly through the valley floor, small and distant, offering no sound at all this high above it. Even the wind seems to move carefully here, brushing gently past the rocks rather than rushing through them, matching the same unhurried patience carried by the animals climbing steadily along the narrow path above, one deliberate step following another. Above the ridge, a scatter of early stars begins to appear, distant and quiet, watching over this slow, careful crossing as the last light fades completely from the sky, leaving only the soft sound of footsteps against stone. The riders leading this small caravan say very little, trusting instead in the sure, familiar footing of the animals beneath them, animals that have crossed this same narrow path more times than anyone traveling with them tonight could easily count. Somewhere ahead, the trail widens again into a broader, gentler slope, though for now, every step remains slow, careful, and entirely deliberate. No one hurries here, not the riders, not the animals, not even the mountain itself, which has watched countless such crossings pass quietly along its side for more centuries than anyone could name. No one hurries here, not the riders, not the animals, not even the mountain itself, watching quietly as it always has, patient beyond counting. Let's turn now towards something a little unexpected, the deep evolutionary history of the camel, since its story actually begins far from the deserts most people picture today. Fossil evidence suggests that early camel ancestors first appeared in North America many millions of years ago, small, deer-like creatures quite different from the animal we know now. Over an enormous span of time, some of these ancestors slowly migrated across ancient land bridges into Asia and eventually into the Middle East and Africa, while their North American relatives eventually disappeared entirely from that continent. Meanwhile, a separate branch crossed into South America, eventually giving rise to relatives like the llama and alpaca, distant cousins that still share certain traits with camels today. It's a strange thought, that this animal so closely tied to deserts we associate with Arabia and North Africa actually has roots stretching back to a completely different continent, shaped slowly by millions of years of shifting climates, changing landscapes, and quiet, patient adaptation across generation after generation. Scientists studying these ancient fossils have slowly pieced together a family tree stretching back further than most people would ever guess, a quiet reminder that the modern camel we picture today is only the latest chapter in a very long, very patient evolutionary story. Even now, researchers continue to study these fossil records carefully, uncovering small new details every few years about how this remarkable lineage slowly changed and adapted across so many millions of years of shifting earth and climate, long before humans ever existed to notice. It's a quiet reminder that even the most familiar creatures often carry surprising, hidden histories, stretching back much further than we'd ever think to imagine at first glance. Now let's drift toward a curious modern chapter in the camel story, one that surprises many people the first time they hear it. In the 19th century, camels were brought to Australia to help with transportation and exploration across its vast, dry interior, regions that shared much in common with the deserts camels already knew well. Over time, some of these camels were released or escaped into the wild, and without natural predators to limit their numbers, they thrived and multiplied across the outback. Today, Australia is home to a large population of wild camels, descendants of those original imported animals, roaming freely across some of the driest parts of the country. It's a strange kind of full circle, an animal shaped by ancient deserts on the other side of the world finding an entirely new home in a landscape it had never known before, adapting once again with the same quiet patience it has always shown, wherever it happens to find itself. Wildlife researchers now study these wild Australian camels closely, curious about how an animal shaped by one desert has adapted so successfully to an entirely different one, half a world away from where its story truly began many centuries ago. Their numbers have grown large enough that management efforts are sometimes needed, a strange modern twist on an old and patient story that began with a handful of imported animals so long ago, brought across the sea for a purpose their descendants would never remember or understand. It remains one of the more curious footnotes in this animal's very long and winding journey across the earth, a quiet reminder of how adaptable this creature has always been. It remains one of the more curious footnotes in this animal's very long and winding journey across the earth, a quiet reminder of how adaptable this creature has always been, wherever it happens to land. Let's talk gently now about conservation, since not every part of the camel's story is without concern. While domesticated camels remain common and widespread across many regions, their wild ancestor, the Bactrian camel found in parts of Central Asia, has become quite rare, with only a small, scattered population remaining in some of the most remote desert regions on Earth. Conservation efforts in certain areas now work carefully to protect these last wild herds, monitoring their movements and working to preserve the harsh, open landscapes they depend on for survival. It's a quiet reminder that even an animal so famously suited to hardship can still face real challenges, particularly as human activity continues to reshape even the most remote corners of the world. These efforts move slowly, much like the animal they're meant to protect, built on patience, careful observation, and a deep respect for a creature that has quietly endured so much across its long and remarkable history. Researchers and local communities often work together on these efforts, since protecting the camel usually means protecting fragile water sources and grazing land that countless other desert creatures depend on as well. Every small step taken to protect these wild herds carries forward a much older story, one stretching back across the entire evolutionary history we explored only moments ago, patient and quiet even now, continuing steadily despite everything the modern world has placed before it. It's slow, careful work, much like everything else connected to this animal, built one small, patient effort at a time. It's slow, careful work, much like everything else connected to this animal, built one small, patient effort at a time, season after season, year after year. Let's rest again for a moment. Picture a vast, empty basin at the edge of the Gobi Desert, pale grasses bending gently in a light evening wind, and somewhere far across the plain, a small group of wild camels moving slowly toward a distant ridge, entirely undisturbed, entirely alone beneath a sky beginning to fill quietly with stars. A soft breeze drifts low across the dry grasses, barely enough to stir them, and the last warm light of the day fades slowly behind the distant ridge, leaving the whole basin bathed in a deep, calm blue. Nothing here moves with any urgency at all, only the slow, patient rhythm of animals perfectly at home in this quiet, remote corner of the world, unwatched and untroubled beneath the gathering dark. Somewhere far across the plain, the small group of wild camels continues its slow, unhurried journey toward a distant ridge, entirely undisturbed, entirely alone beneath a sky now filling gently with stars, one by one, soft and quiet. No fences mark this land, no roads cross it, only the same wide, open silence that has always stretched across this basin, patient and unbroken, exactly as it was long before anyone ever gave it a name. The camels themselves seem entirely unaware of how far their ancestors once traveled to reach a place so remote, so quiet, and so completely their own, content simply to walk on beneath the stars. The camels themselves seem entirely unaware of how far their ancestors once traveled to reach a place so remote, so quiet, and so completely their own, content simply to walk on beneath the stars, unhurried and calm. As we bring tonight's journey through the camel's world to a gentle close, let's take a moment to look back over everything we've wandered through together. We've explored its body, built patiently for heat and thirst, its quiet social life within the herd, its long partnership with the people who have depended on it for generations, and even its surprising, deep evolutionary roots stretching back across continents and millions of years. Through every part of this story, one quiet thread has remained the same, a patient, steady creature that asks for little and endures so much, moving calmly through some of the harshest landscapes on this earth without complaint. If you've made it this far, your body is likely heavy now, your thoughts slow and soft, drifting the way sand drifts across a quiet dune. That's exactly where you should be right now, resting, unhurried, ready for sleep to finally take hold. Perhaps what stays with us most, more than any single fact, is the quiet lesson this animal seems to offer without ever meaning to, that patience and steadiness can carry you through even the harshest, most unforgiving places, one calm step after another. It's a gentle thing to carry with you into sleep tonight, a reminder that slow and steady, patient and calm, has always been enough to carry any creature safely through even the longest, most difficult stretch of road. Let that thought settle now, quietly, the way everything else about this story has settled, slow and unhurried, right alongside you, easing you gently toward the sleep that waits. Let that thought settle now, quietly, the way everything else about this story has settled, slow and unhurried, right alongside you, easing you gently toward the sleep that waits, patient and near. And so, as the last of tonight's story settles quietly around you, it's time to let the desert rest, and let yourself rest along with it. Thank you so much for spending this time with us tonight, wandering slowly through the world of the camel, one soft thought at a time. If you enjoyed this quiet journey, it would mean a great deal if you left a like and considered subscribing, so more of these calm, slow stories can find their way to you in the future. We'd also love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, whether it's a favorite part of tonight's story or simply a quiet hello before you drift off. For now, though, there's nothing left to do but close your eyes, let your breathing settle into something slow and even, and allow yourself to fully rest. Wherever you are tonight, we hope you feel calm, safe, and ready for a deep, peaceful sleep. Good night, sleep well, and we'll see you next time for another slow, gentle journey into the quiet corners of the natural world. We're deeply grateful you chose to spend this quiet time with us, letting these words carry you gently away from the busy noise of the day and into something calmer, something slower, something kinder to your tired mind. However you found your way here tonight, we hope this story leaves you feeling just a little more at ease than when it began, a little lighter, a little calmer, ready now for real, restful sleep. Take care of yourself tonight, and every night after this one, and thank you again, truly, for letting us be a small, quiet part of your evening, however brief. Take care of yourself tonight, and every night after this one, and thank you again, truly, for letting us be a small, quiet part of your evening, however brief, however quiet.